Ryan Thomas with EastWest here, and welcome to the official walkthrough for the new action pack that's now available for Hollywood Orchestrator. And it features 4 brand new themes that we've titled Ancient Battles, Animation Action, The Chase, and Modern Warfare. And each one of these themes contains 6 different presets for a total of 24 adrenaline-pumping patches. Now, as already mentioned, this preset package is geared towards all things action, from medieval warfare to modern gunfights, and many of these presets are actually derived from my own experiences with scoring action scenes, which I've been very fortunate to do a lot of in the past. So in this video, we will be demoing each one of these live so that you can hear just how easy these are to work with, and we'll also be talking about the various applications for these presets. But I do want to emphasize that these are just going to be suggestions to help get you started. These are designed to fit well within a variety of different contexts and be as versatile as possible. So feel free to be creative with these, and as always, let your own ear be your guide. And first up is Ancient Battles, which is very much geared towards the ancient war epic and fantasy adventure genres that often feature those really long, drawn-out battle scenes. And that actually leads us into a fun bit of scoring theory. So when I'm writing something for an action scene, I like to do my research and see what other composers have done for similar scenes in similar films, TV shows, and video games. And I found that very often there is a somewhat specific flow to these. There are various acts to an action cue, and they tend to start off with the most exciting and colorful music at the beginning, and then, maybe 2 to 3 minutes in, the music starts to become more suspenseful than anything, and it sort of melds into the background. And I think that's because if the music was very exciting and colorful all the way through a 7-minute-long battle scene, the listener's ears would start to get very tired. So there does have to be an ebb and a flow to the music. And I've tried to model these presets accordingly. So some of these might be more appropriate for that very exciting music at the beginning of a battle, and others might be more appropriate for that more suspenseful music in the thick of the fighting. So Ancient Battles 01 is going to be on the more exciting side of things, which means that it might be ideal for those initial moments in the battle, maybe where the two sides are rushing to meet each other on the battlefield. I could also hear it for maybe a scene where the action has shifted to a rider being pursued by some enemies on horseback. Now, Ancient Battles 02 is going to be on the more suspenseful side of things, so this might be more appropriate for that middle of the battle action where the fighting's been going on for a sustained period of time, and you just kind of need the music to sit back and let the sound design drive things forward. And, speaking of sound design, that's obviously going to be a huge component to any modern action scene. In fact, I've been asked before by a director to make the music, quote, more boring so that the sound design can sort of take center stage. So here is Ancient Battles 02. And now we're into the 4/4 presets. Of course, the previous 2 were both in 6/8. And Ancient Battles 03 is another one of those thick of the fight kind of presets. But this one, I think, also has kind of a heroic aspect to it. And Ancient Battles 04 is going to be very exciting and colorful, so this might be great for when you need to just kind of amp things up a little bit in the scene. And this phrase is also very long, so a single chord will go a long way. Now, Ancient Battles '05 is going to be in 3/4, and this one is very exciting. It's got some really intense ostinatos and has a kind of percussive and choppy feel to it. Finally, Ancient Battles '06 is again in 3/4, and this one is really going to excel in those parts of the scene where you just need the music to sit back and let the sound design and the visuals drive things forward. But of course, there is still enough musical content here to give some substance to the soundtrack, and sometimes that's really all you need. So those are all the presets for Ancient Battles. Let's go ahead and move on to our next theme. So animated films and TV shows are very close to my heart because I grew up during the golden age of Disney, Warner Brothers, and Nickelodeon. And I've had the incredible privilege of scoring some really cool animated films in the past. And like I mentioned earlier, I like to do my research whenever I'm scoring something, and the presets that you're about to hear are a synthesis of what I've learned from other composers and my own ideas and experiences. So you'll notice that these are going to differ from the other themes, and that they'll be a bit more colorful, they'll be a bit more technically complex, because of course, whenever you're scoring something, the music needs to match the visuals. And when you're working on an animated film or TV show, the visuals tend to be a bit more exaggerated and over the top. So the phrases in these presets are going to be a bit longer, they're going to have a bit more variation, and like I said, they're just going to be a bit more colorful in general. So let's go ahead and just dive into these, starting with Animation Action '01. And the first two presets in this theme are going to be in 6/8. So Animation Action '01 is going to be very fun, it's going to be very exciting, so it might be ideal for a more lighthearted cartoon chase scene. So with this one, I think depending on the chords that you choose, it can also sound a little bit heroic. Now, Animation Action '02 is also in 6/8, but this one I think is a bit more dangerous than Animation Action '01. And unlike with the previous preset, which worked well with simple triads, I think this one works better with those very closed note clusters. Now, if you noticed, this preset doesn't feature any violins or French horns. And I did that very intentionally because when I was writing those low string ostinatos with the percussion and those low brass hits, it just felt complete at that point, and I wanted to offer the user some space to write some very simple melody lines in the French horns and the violins. So I just whipped this up in about 5 minutes. So the takeaway here, of course, is that you can write a lot of music very quickly with these. And now we're into the 4/4 variations on this theme, and Animation Action '03 is also going to have a fairly dangerous feel to it. So this one might be appropriate for a more serious fight scene, or maybe another chase scene, but one where the characters are in a little bit more danger. Now, Animation Action 04 is designed to complement Animation Action 03, and while this one can definitely have a suspenseful feel to it, I think it could also be ideal for a scene where maybe something really big is about to happen. So I think this one can also have an anticipatory feel to it. All right, and Animation Action 05 is one of the 3/4 variations on this theme, and this one's also fairly intense and a little bit dangerous sounding, but I think it's also fairly versatile as well, so it might be appropriate for really any scene where something serious is going down. And because the orchestration is fairly open on this, it might be one of those that does well underneath dialogue during an action scene. And finally, Animation Action 06 is another one that I think can be pretty versatile. So depending on the chords that you choose, this one might be really ideal for a cartoon battle scene, or maybe another chase scene where the characters are in some danger or they're about to get caught. Or maybe they're about to get away. So those are all of the animation action presets. Let's go ahead and move on to our next theme. Okay, so the chase was designed for pretty much any modern chase scene, whether that be car chase, motorcycle chase, foot chase, whatever. And these are going to be ideal for your spy thrillers, really for any modern action film or TV show or video game. And these are going to have a lot of very intense ostinatos. They're going to have those big fat brass stabs and that little ticky-ticky percussion kind of going throughout. So these are hopefully pretty versatile. There are 4 4/4 variants and 2 5/4 variants. So let's check out the Chase 01. And this one might be ideal for the beginning of a chase scene. You know, we talked about kind of the flow of most action scenes, and this one might be good for that scene where the characters are all hopping into the cars very frantically and are being chased by the bad guys. So here is the Chase 01. Now, I view the Chase 02 as somewhat complementary to the previous preset. This one might be more appropriate for those parts of the scene where you kind of need to give the audience a bit of a break, but there still needs to be something there to support the tension and the suspense. So here is the Chase 02. And I like this one because I feel like you can get a lot of mileage out of it because there's a lot of variation within that phrase. And I did want to go ahead and take this opportunity to show you just how easy all of these presets are to edit. So, of course, you can change the note placement, you can change the actual note itself, you can even edit the expression data. So, for example, if that swell was a little bit too prominent for the piece that you were writing, you could level that out a little bit if you wanted to. And of course, you can even change the instruments in these various instrument slots. So all of these are user customizable. You can build your own from the ground up, or you can tweak the presets really as much as you want. Now, the Chase 03 is probably one of my favorites just because of how versatile it is. It can really do anything depending on the chords that you choose, but I will say that the orchestration probably lends itself more to the most exciting parts of the action scene. So here is the Chase 03. Now, the Chase 04 is another one that you might want to use in the thick of the action, but this one is a little bit more subtle than the Chase 03. So even though this one is still very intense, it's still very suspenseful, I think it's also going to give your listener just a little bit of a break. So here is the Chase 04. And the Chase 05 is kind of difficult to categorize. This one is one of the 5/4 variants on this theme. And the best way I can describe it is sort of almost emotionally neutral, but it's still definitely an action cue. And because there's a lot of space in this one, as you'll hear in just a moment, I think this would actually work really well, specifically underneath dialogue that's happening during an action scene. So here is the Chase 05. And once again, we have another preset that has a fairly long phrase, so I feel like you could get a lot of mileage out of this one, pun intended. All right, and finally, the Chase 06 is another one of my favorite presets. This one is also in 5/4, and it is fairly similar to the Chase 05. It's got kind of that cool vibe to it, but this one, because it's got these tremolo sustains in the violins, as well as the French horn and trumpet sustains in the brass, it's going to kind of amp up the suspense a little bit. So this one might be really good for maybe a section that needs to build into something. So again, I think you could have a few phrases of the Chase 05 followed by a few phrases of the Chase 06 and have quite a bit of music written very quickly. So in any case, that is the Chase. Let's go ahead and move on to our final theme, which is modern warfare. So as you might have guessed from the title, the Modern Warfare presets are geared towards pretty much any production that features a modern law enforcement or military setting. So think soldiers with night vision and radio earpieces infiltrating an enemy base and then getting into a gunfight. And most of these presets were actually very purposefully designed for those various parts of these action scenes that seem to be very similar in these kinds of productions. So let's go ahead and dive into these, starting with Modern Warfare 01. And this one is really intense and exciting. There's a lot of movement in the ostinato lines. There are these really sharp brass stabs and percussion hits. So this, I think, would be ideal for when the action is first kicking off. And then Modern Warfare 02 is the complement to 01. So if you're starting off a scene with Modern Warfare 01, then after a while, when you need to let the visuals and the sound design sort of take the lead and give the listener a break, you might switch to Modern Warfare 02. And we're now into the 4/4 variants on this theme. So Modern Warfare 03 is sort of subtle and dark, so this would be ideal for those moments that are leading up to some sort of big battle or conflict to build the suspense and the tension. And then Modern Warfare 04 is pretty straightforward. This one features these really driving ostinatos in the strings and these very punchy brass stabs. So this one would be ideal for the part of the action scene that's the most intense. Now, Modern Warfare 05, I think, could fill a similar role as 04, but it's not quite as intense, and there's a lot of space in the orchestration, so it might actually work well underneath, say, dialogue between two characters who are trying to communicate in the middle of a gunfight. And finally, Modern Warfare 06 is a really fun preset. This one is very subtle. It just features strings and percussion, but it is purpose-built for those scenes where the soldiers are sneaking up on the enemy base under cover of darkness, and the action hasn't quite started yet, but you need the music to build the tension and the suspense. So this is Modern Warfare 06. All right, and that is going to conclude this walkthrough. I hope you enjoyed it, and I want to remind you that all of the instruments and reverbs that were used in this video come with a Composer Cloud Plus subscription. And we're adding these new preset packages all the time, so it's really an incredible value. So in any case, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.